Imagine this: you're at a crowded public beach, suddenly someone nearby begins to struggle. They're splashing, gasping for air, clearly in trouble. What would you do? Would you jump in? Would you call for help? Or would you freeze, waiting for someone else to stand in and act? Most of us like to think we'd rush to help, but psychology shows something surprising. The larger the crowd, the less likely anyone will act right away, including ourselves. This isn't about being heartless or cruel, it's about how our brains respond in groups. This phenomenon is called the bystander effect. Today I'll explain what it is, where it came from, what experiments revealed about it, and why it matters in our everyday lives. But what is the bystander effect exactly? The bystander effect is the tendency for people to be less likely to help in an emergency when other people are present. In other words, the bigger the crowd, the smaller the chance that any single person will act. Think of it this way: if you're the only one who sees a car accident, you're most likely going to call 911. But if you see the same car accident, but it's surrounded by 50 people, are you going to be willing to call 911, assuming that everyone else already has? Maybe you've already experienced something like that in a hockey game, or even in classrooms or online. There are a few factors that influence the bystander effect. One being the number of bystanders. Secondly, the relations to the victim, or relationship you have with the victim. So if you know them, you may be more tempted to help them. Third, personal competency. So if you feel as if you are capable of helping. Social pressure. If you feel as if you do or do not feel as if you need to help. And lastly, the ambiguity of the emergency. So are we sure that it's an emergency, or are we just speculating? The bystander effect became famous after the 1964 murder of Kitty Genovese in Queens, New York. Kitty was a young woman, just 28 years old, walking home from work late at night. She was attacked near her apartment building, and news reporters claimed that 38 people either saw or heard parts of the attack but did nothing. No one called the police until it was too late. The story shocked the world. People asked, how could dozens of neighbors witness a violent crime and fail to act? Later investigation showed the reporting wasn't completely accurate. There weren't really 38 silent witnesses, but some people did try to help. But the story was powerful enough to spark decades of research into why people sometimes stay silent in emergencies. Prior to the murder of Kitty Genovese, two psychologists, John Darley and Bib Latané, were so fascinated by the Genovese case, they wondered if this is really about people being cruel, or if this is how groups shapes people's behaviors. So they created an experiment to test it. They had the seizure test and the smoke room test. In the one study, participants thought they were talking over an intercom with a small group. Suddenly, one person seemed to have a seizure. If participants believed they were the only witness, about 85% quickly tried to help. But when they believed others were also watching or listening, only 31% seemed to help. That is approximately a 51% drop. In another study, participants were filling out a survey in a room when smoke began sweeping in. If they were alone, almost everyone reported it. But when they were in a group, people looked at each other, shrugged, and many did nothing. They assumed it wasn't serious just because no one else reacted. This would be a prime example of the pluralistic ignorance, as we all think, if no one else thinks this is serious, why should I? I feel that it's serious. This leads to people avoiding embarrassment. But why does this bystander effect actually happen? Psychologists highlight a few key reasons, such as the first of the two being diffusion of responsibility. When we're in a group, responsibility feels shared. Instead of thinking, I need to act, we think someone else will do it, such as the example that was previously mentioned about the police officers and the car accident. If I'm the only one on the scene, why should I not call the police and leave it to someone else? The second reason is pluralistic ignorance. We look around at others to figure out how to react. If nobody seems alarmed about the situation at hand, we assume the situation isn't serious, even if deep down it feels it might be. And finally, fear of embarrassment can also play a role. People don't want to overreact and look silly if they misjudge the situation. These social pressures explain why people freeze and even some clearly need help. An example of pluralistic ignorance could be a couple fighting in a grocery store, but since we are too afraid to interpose, we still end up walking away. This can be a cry for help by the woman, or this could also be just them on how they talk, so therefore we don't react. The bystander effect is more than just a psychological term, it has real consequences in healthcare. Quick actions save lives, so professionals are trained to not assume others will step in. In schools, students and teachers can prevent bullying by speaking up instead of waiting. In the workplace, addressing harassment or safety issues are often dependent on one person deciding to take responsibility. By learning about the bystander effect, we can remind ourselves if you see something wrong, don't wait for someone else. Your actions matter. This is a huge role in today's society as we all stand behind our phones and just watch people bully each other online while we could easily step in. Oops. The bystander effect shows us that emergencies are everyone's responsibility. When people stay frozen, it's usually not because they don't care, but because of social pressures and assumptions. But awareness changes everything. The next time you see someone in need, whether it's in a swimming pool or on the street, at a school, online, don't wait for someone else to be there to help. Your actions can make all the difference. This also demonstrates how social influences can keep us silent, but awareness gives us power. Emergencies are everyone's responsibility. The next time you see someone in need, step forward and lend them a hand because you never know if you're the first one to even offer. One of the biggest takeaways from this presentation is that to remember this. The bystander effect is not about people being uncaring, it's about hesitation, confusion, and a belief that someone else will take the responsibility off of our hands. Once we recognize this, we can make a conscious decision to break the cycle. The bystander effect teaches us that silence and hesitation are easy, but courage is contagious. All it takes is one person deciding, I'm not going to wait, I'm going to help, and that one decision can save a life, stop harm, or bring comfort to when it's needed most. So be that person, don't wait, step forward, and help. Don't stand and watch, step in and help.